Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's get that weird energy going.
Hi,
everybody.
We're watching movies today.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched The Suicide Squad. Is
the
it the?
Suicide Squad.
It's not a Suicide Squad.
No, it's not a Suicide Squad.
A squad of suicide.
It's not like a walk in the clouds.
No. It should be, though.
Robert Dubois. He's in prison for putting Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet.
I'm not joining your Suicide Squad.
We'll see.
My court date is coming up, and Miss Waller said maybe you could help me out.
You're flexing in my door!
Everyone stand down.
Miss Waller, I don't...
Stand down!
I wouldn't take such extreme measures if this mission went more important than you could possibly imagine. Are you in or out?
Yeah, it's more like the Hudsucker proxy.
Right.
Not a Hudsucker proxy.
Right. This is the big one. This is the big one everybody's talking about, right?
Yeah, that's the one on everyone's lips.
Even though for some reason I've seen articles of
Dancing
it's
across
bombing.
everyone's lips. Well, that's okay.
And it's like, well, yeah, I was about to say, it's on HBO, and there's a fucking pandemic.
Yeah,
so,
that is exploding all over again this week. Like, cases are doubling every single day.
Yeah. That said, I did see this in theaters.
So did I, yeah.
Yeah, because it felt like one for that. This is, of course, James Gunn taking the doing a redemption for the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Because the first one was botched by, I would say, DC, right?
Yeah, Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers.
There's a lot of, I mean, who knows how good that movie would have been, but it's definitely a chopped up mess for sure.
It's a Fantastic Four situation where it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if the Josh Trank version was good. I just know that it wasn't what we saw.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like there's been a little there's been like weird beefs around this movie because it was that with David Ayer where he had some sort of internet beef, and then the Scorsese thing with James Gunn, even though that felt like it was,
There's a lot more context in it.
It's the fake news, Tom. It's fake news media.
Oh, God, yeah. It's just, it's dumb why we need to keep having this argument. Like,
Yeah.
Good Lord, he is allowed to not like superhero movies.
Right. He is extremely
Holy
allowed.
shit. Like,
He's allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants.
People are allowed to not like things.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that brings us to the question, how did you like The Suicide Squad?
I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I thought it had more character depth than most blockbusters we're seeing.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't have... Now, that's not saying it's incredible. It doesn't have that much. It just has... It has enough.
Yeah, I do think... I think there's going to be a tendency to overshoot it with this movie.
Yeah.
Because I did realize something watching this movie. One, first of all, this is a fantastic movie. It's for a blockbuster. It does a lot of the right things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It did make me realize that I am deep into superhero fatigue.
Yeah.
Because it's everything it should be, but it didn't really, it didn't delight me. I haven't thought about it much since.
Oh, well, yeah.
This is what I mean is that this is more about me. Like, I think I'm just very fatigued from this genre.
Well, what's interesting, I agree. Like, I'm hitting pretty hard superhero fatigue, but watching this movie and like talking about it now, I have to almost remind myself that it's a comic book movie or like a superhero movie, because it doesn't really. It's such an odd blockbuster. I love this movie as a blockbuster for sure. It's weird. It goes for things. You can tell it's somebody who had a specific vision and point of view.
Yes.
I kept forgetting it was a superhero movie because it doesn't feel like one. It's not really. I mean, it's structured like one, but it for some reason it just didn't feel like one. It felt more like The Dirty Dozen, which is very intentional.
Right. Yeah, I still felt the structure a little bit. We have to fight a big bad. At
you
got
to fight the big bad. Yeah.
There's some sequences
when your big bad's a giant starfish.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yes, give me more of this weird shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I appreciate the movie. The biggest thing I appreciate about this movie, even though it's like over 2 hours long, it is very efficient.
It is.
It starts immediately with the action, and it kind of never stops. It starts where most movies would start their third act.
Or their second act.
Yeah. And you think at first, because it does do the like, oh, this many days earlier, I was like, damn it. And then it immediately goes back to it. Almost immediately.
Its little flashback only lasts maybe 5 minutes, less than that.
Yeah. And so like, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
A lot of the emotional stuff didn't really hit me.
No, but it's there.
But it's there, yes. The one thing that did get me was not get me, but like I really liked was Harley Quinn shooting that guy and then explaining why.
Yeah.
And her explanation was extremely reasonable. Well, sort of. Where she's like, yeah, I would just break up with you. Like, you're throwing out all these red flags, like murdering children. I would break up with you, but there's a tendency of like, they don't go away. Like when I try that. So I'm going to just kill you.
Yeah, I'm going to do the right thing and just kill you immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I really, obviously Harley Quinn is great in this. It did feel like she was not an afterthought, but I know that the one requirement was that she was in it. And she is actually kind of benched for some of this movie.
A little bit. She has her own storyline for a bit. Which I wouldn't necessarily call that bench. She's just separated from the team for a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. And I do keep like
cutting
that
to her. Yeah, I think it helps because it's sort of about like bringing her character. It's like 'cause she starts out in the original Suicide Squad as, you know, very much a person in an abusive relationship to the point of being literal property. And then in Birds of Prey, it's about her sort of the first, I guess, stages of breaking free from that. And then in this movie, it's like the completion of that, where it's like, yeah, I'm learning to notice these things in people ahead of time.
Yeah,
I'm just going to shoot you in the heart before this becomes a problem.
Yeah, it's wild how she does have that arc.
Mm-hmm.
And what's neat is that arc, you don't need to watch all 3 films for that arc. You know what I mean? Where it's like every stage that she's at, is at least a little relatable, or you get it.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't even thought about Birds of Prey. Taking, like, I guess it's one of those weird things where like the timeline's definitely disjointed.
Yeah.
But not, because she does get away in the first Suicide Squad, right? And then Birds of Prey is her breaking away from the Joker, and then in this we can assume she was arrested again.
She says there's a couple. She says she had road rage in a bank, so she tried to rob a bank.
Right,
like there's a quick explanation.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
I don't understand her connection to Idris Elba. Like, he has to go rescue her. And I felt like because she's kind of separated from them for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get a sense of their relationship.
It wasn't with Idris Elba. It was with Joel Kinnaman.
Is he the one who's like,
yeah,
Flag is the rescue
one. Yeah,
her?
Flag is the one. Is we have to go get her.
Oh, okay.
And yeah,
that same
and
rules apply.
They have a connection at the end. I think where I think it's the two of them where they comment on how Flag was their friend because like Idris served with him.
Right. They do enough of the work that it's like. And again, this movie is mostly fun.
Yeah. before we move away from that, just one final thing about Harley in this movie is they set it up like, and then Flag being like, we have to go rescue her. They set it up like she's going to have to be rescued. Like she gets taken by the evil president of Cordo Maltese, who wants to make her his wife to quell this uprising. So it's very typical of these movies. Like they get her, they make her put on a sexy dress, and
Right.
you know there's like a seduction scene in his chamber. But then of course she just shoots him, and then they take her to be where she's being like tortured. She's being electrocuted so they can get information out of her to see if there's anybody else on the island. So it seems like it's like, oh man, the rest of the team has got to get there in time. But nope, she just gets out of there and kills everyone in the building.
Yeah, I wish the trailer didn't spoil
The trailer
that.
does spoil it a little bit, yeah, because
Yeah.
it's that scene where they're scaling the wall and then she just walks up. It's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. It reminded me, because I think there was this question of like, what the fuck is like someone like Harley Quinn doing on the Suicide Squad? The first movie fails because it creates a situation where they're like, we have aliens and Superman, so we need our own suicide. Like they try to justify why the Suicide Squad
and like,
exists.
and none of them can. Yeah, it's like we need something for when Superman gets out of hand.
Yeah.
It's like one person on your team can deal with Superman. Like the rest
Right.
of these people.
And I think a lot of how the first Suicide Squad failed, this one succeeds where it doesn't explain a lot. It's just like, look, it is what it is. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this. And we also see Harley Quinn's, what her superpower basically is causing chaos.
Yeah, it's
because
the
she
same,
gets
yeah.
captured and like a virus, she just like digs her way through this organization
Right.
and ruins them from the top down.
It's the same,
and it's great.
It's the same reason you'd put the Joker on a team. It's just pure chaos. Like, yeah, just drop her in the middle like the friggin' alien.
Yeah,
Let her rip.
Yeah. Point her in the right direction.
You just
and then
aim
you're good.
her. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was it was a very good use of her. It's an ensemble film, so like it's just interesting because they spend a lot of time on Idris Elba because I mean he's Idris Elba, I get it.
Yeah. And he's more or less, outside of Harley, he would be the main character. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I think he's more of the main character.
He's
than Harley.
He's more of the main character than she is. Yeah.
But she kind of steals the show, and I think that's the point.
That's the point.
Like she's just ever present throughout the movie, causing havoc. What was I going to talk about? One of the things. All right. This was what I felt like was also a superhero issue, is that they do kill a lot of people. That's something this is being praised for, but it's all the people you expect, right?
Sort of.
Like there wasn't.
There's a couple. Like they use. He utilizes Captain Boomerang, Jai Courtney.
Oh yeah, that was a delightful death. That's the one. Jai Courtney, fucking dying in the first 5 minutes or so. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's well implemented because he's one of the only returning characters, and they establish that
Poor
there's
Captain Boomerang.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a pretty sweet way to go out.
Yeah.
When they cut back to him and it's just his arm holding the boomerang straight up.
Yeah.
It's pretty freaking metal. I would be all right with that. But they use the fact that he has a connection to Harley. There's some emotional stakes now. Oh, it's a person we care about has died. Oh no.
Yeah.
And then I was surprised when Flag died. Didn't expect that.
Wait, who?
Flag. Joel Kinnaman.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was pretty surprising, I guess. I guess I'm wondering how many of these they're going to make too.
Oh, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, I'm just appreciating the movie as it stands.
Yeah. That was a good death.
And then Polka Dot Man, they actually they kill people, but when they die, you care. And, except for the first bunch of people where we have no idea who they are, and it's like the Deadpool 2 joke where they were just picked sheerly for their ridiculousness and the fact that they were going to die immediately.
That that was still pretty fun.
Yeah, it was funny. Even though you knew what was going to happen, it was still funny.
You sort of know from the trailer, because
Yeah.
they show people like Pete Davidson, and it's like, I don't see him in anything but like a couple of shots that you have. It's like clear, like, oh, he's going to die immediately.
Oh, yeah.
The one that I actually was surprised that they didn't get more mileage out of, and I mean, I did delight in it, was the fucking weasel immediately drowning.
The weasel.
That's a great joke.
And then
They
there's a
dropped
little
the weasel in.
that little post mid-credit scene where he just gets up and runs off.
Yeah. I thought they were going to show him like running towards an elementary school.
Yeah.
Because the bit is that he killed 20-something kids.
Yeah. It's just a giant weasel.
Yeah, he's not.
Just
he
a
doesn't have any
horrible
intelligence.
monster. We're there in the plane, and I think Flag says something like, "Well, because somebody asks what the hell the weasel is doing there, and he's like, no, it's fine. I think he agreed to this." Like, they have no way of communicating with it.
It's just a big weasel.
It's just a giant weasel. It drowns immediately.
It drowns immediately, folks. If you haven't seen this movie, do know that the weasel drowns. Although I did realize, like, when I thought the fact that it murdered children, I thought that was going to be like,
Yeah.
kind of like the shark. How like the shark is, we like the shark, but the shark isn't good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was hoping they'd get more mileage out of this child murdering weasel, where like it would end up having to like save the day or something.
This child murdering monster.
Yeah, but I do very much appreciate that they just immediately drown the weasel because no one thought to check to see if the weasel swam, and they throw it in the ocean. That is a great gag.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Yeah. You know what it was? I like a lot of the conceptual gags like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't laugh much at the lines. Was there any lines that really tickled you?
Well, the one I just said, where he's talking about. So I think the weasel agreed to this. Yeah, it's a good script.
It's a good script.
It's tightly written. The dialogue is good without feeling. I thought the dialogue was funny without feeling overwritten.
I think it might be that the trailer gives you a lot of the punchlines.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no line that really like. Again, I really like a lot of the broad ideas. I really liked them going into that base, killing all the people, and then getting to the rescue and realizing that they were all the rebel good guys.
Yeah, they were the good
killed.
guys. Yeah,
And she's in there and she's like, "How did you get in here? I wasn't alerted." And they're all like looking really guilty. That was a great bit.
Yeah, I think I almost appreciate that, where it's like there's not a lot of huge laughs in the movie, but it's like a good simmer, if that makes sense. Like it does a good job of maintaining the tone, where it's a lot of lines that are just like the kind of lines where you're like, oh, that's pretty funny, but you don't actually like kind of laugh. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, what it is, here's what I think it is about James Gunn. Because I think, and Taika Waititi, who is in this,
he is.
As the heroin-addicted rat father.
He sure is. Rat daddy.
Rat daddy. There's a certain
the
charm to the way they
rats.
do things, where like their movies aren't, their superhero movies rather aren't perfect, because they still do have to be superhero movies, like Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
I love that movie, but there's at no point in that movie where you feel like anything matters, and they make it a comedy more than anything else. Kind of for that reason. Like, it's the thing where it's like, if you're making a superhero movie, you might as well make it fun.
Yeah.
As opposed to brooding, because that's the easier thing to achieve. It's hard to make me genuinely feel, sadness in one of these movies. What I was getting at is them opposed to someone like Joss Whedon, whose humor we got really sick of. I think it's because they're both meta jokes. Like, they both think in the meta of like how we expect movies to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is that Joss Whedon just had the characters like say the things. You know what I mean? Like his jokes were largely dialogue jokes. And I think they got stale quicker.
And everybody also sounds the same. Like his jokes are also his jokes
everybody
also
sounds like him. Yeah,
they also tend to be overwritten.
Mm-hmm. Whereas in this, it's not a bunch of jokes about isn't it wild? There's a weasel here. It's more about what happens.
It's the weasel can't speak to us, and it's murdered 27 children. Like it's the,
and then the fact that it dies
stuff.
immediately. It's we definitely knew what we were doing. Like when they're bringing them all in, when Michael Rooker is there, and like
with that wig,
yeah. Like I think this might be a meta thing, but like we all knew. Or at least me and you knew, like, Michael Rooker is dead meat.
Oh, yeah.
They introduce the movie. They start with him. If you watch the trailers, you know he's not in it much. You know that James Gunn and Michael Rooker are, like, friends. It's his Bruce Campbell. So you know, like, oh, he's going to immediately die.
Yeah, him and Fillion. They're both kind of occupy that Bruce Campbell role for James Gunn. More so Rooker, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Wait, where the fuck was Fillion in this?
Fillion was the detachable kid.
Oh, yes! I was going to talk about the detachable kid.
The arms floating.
Yeah. And so, again, this is why this works so well. Is because, so we know that these people are probably going to die.
Yeah.
We don't know what it was TDK. Yeah.
TDK, yeah.
And we don't know what that stands for. Then they dump them out into the ocean. The weasel immediately dies. And so, like, already they've subverted our expectations because we know these people are probably going to die, but we assume that we're going to show how expendable they are, right? And that they die in battle. So no, the weasel drowns. And that's it's like a Saving Private Ryan moment where it shows, it also doubles as showing how little the Suicide Squad, like the company people, care about their well-being. But it's also very funny. The Pete Davidson double cross was weird to me because he does have a bomb in his head. So it's like, I wanted to know what the fuck his plan was, but whatever.
Who knows? Yeah. It's just...
And they introduced Michael Rooker as this, like, sort of badass. And then the fucking detachable kid's arms come off, and they just pester people.
They float. They, like, float across the battlefield and just start, like, slapping people.
Yeah.
And just putting their hands in people's faces.
Ineffectively. Because they have nothing to, like, push back against. They're just floating. And again, it's one of those jokes that, like, I feel like Joss Whedon would have made, like, everybody talk about it. And instead, they just show his arms detached, float across, and then just sort of bother people. And they just, do
like the sound effects. It's just like real, like meaty, like slapping sounds.
It reminds me of like something like Venture Brothers, where it's like everybody has powers, but they're not necessarily good powers.
Yes, yeah,
they're just powers. And so and he gets fucking killed. Of course, they all start getting killed. And then they do Michael Rooker, the badass, just screaming and running into the ocean.
Yeah, paddling out in the middle of nowhere, just gripped with terror, so they blow his head up.
Yeah, it's a great intro because it makes you understand everything. Like, you wouldn't have to watch the original Suicide Squad. They make it really quick. They're like, here's the drill, Michael Rooker. Because we start from his perspective.
Yeah.
And they say, we're going to put the bomb in you. And then we see how little they care about them. And it's a great way to introduce everything the movie's going to be. And it also ties into the plot. They also say, oh, what if Harley's also in that group? And it ties into what they're doing. And that was very smart because I feel like another movie would start with like a random group doing a random mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just it's a very
it's just the B
efficient
team on the same mission. Yeah, exactly. It's efficient. It cuts. It has the additional function of it cuts over to our main group of characters. They're the B team who are coming on the other side of the island at the same time. And this first group where everybody died was only meant to be a distraction for them to get in. So it's further driving home the point how little regard they have for their well-being.
So we know exactly what kind of movie we're watching, and
that
nothing's
nobody
been
is
wasted.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still
We still know a couple of people. Like, we're pretty sure Harley's going to be
Harley
okay.
Quinn, yeah.
I mean, everybody
also,
else is
like,
kind of up in the air.
We knew how doomed that group was because they really set them up.
Yeah.
I wish there was more jokes with the alien lady because they're sort of, they take bets on them and they're like, we don't know, is she an alien or what? And then she just dies.
Right. Well, she brings down a helicopter on top of herself that like kills half the team when it explodes.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that wasn't helpful.
Yeah. That's really funny. I really liked the scene with Idris Elba and his kid because I also thought was a very smart scene because it's doing a joke. But it's also establishing the relationship and what's at stake. Like they did a good job because I feel like whenever they do this bit, like they did it with Will Smith's character.
With Will Smith's character, exactly.
Yeah, and they make it sappy and over the top.
Yeah.
And they don't change the fact that Idris Elba is still kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like he's not a good father.
No.
His daughter gets brought in.
Their scene is them screaming "fuck you" at each other over and over again.
Because she stole a video wristwatch.
Yeah, she stole like an Apple Watch, and he's confounded by it. He's like, "Why would you want to watch TV on your watch?" And she's like, "It does other things."
Yeah, when she screams, it does other things. That was great.
Yeah,
and so like it gives us like it's what I think people like this James Gunn are really good at is that we know the motions they're going through.
Yeah.
Idris Elba needs a reason to
care.
Yeah. There needs to be something at stake. Why not it be his daughter? But they don't waste our time with a scene trying to prove that he loves his daughter because we can understand everybody loves their kids even if they don't.
Yeah.
Even if or rather like you can that's not necessarily true, but like you can figure that out from what they give us.
Yeah.
Which is that he is a terrible dad, but he doesn't want his daughter to go to jail and possibly die. Because they threaten her with that, where they're like, we're going to put, your kid in jail.
And who knows what might happen to her in there, which becomes a secondary thread that ends up tying into the finale because her office... the big boss lady, Viola Davis, Amanda Waller, her office winds up turning against her at the end because they're just like, this is too fucked up. So they mutiny.
Which was another really good way of doing it is they never they establish her as the villain just because the measures she's taking are so extreme.
Exactly.
Because she crosses the line. She's doing this all to prisoners, and no one in the office cares until she starts threatening like a teenage girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing she's done is stolen a watch. Yeah. She's talking about murdering this child.
Yeah, and that solves the bomb situation.
Yeah.
They don't do some like dumb hacking thing. Like they use a real human reason why.
Yeah, with a thread that they plant pretty early on. Mm-hmm. So like there you go. I mean, it's not like this isn't revolutionary. It's just he's just doing the stuff you do when you write a story.
He's doing the work, and it's refreshing.
Yeah.
For example, another thing he does that I thought was very smart is that I was at one point in this movie, because all these people, they go out, they're doing this mission together, they don't get along, they don't, none of them are know each other very well.
Well,
and
it's...
Some of them do, but
I was about to say, like, most of them get along except for John Cena.
Well, what I was getting at is that they like the shark is a problem. They're all getting to know each other, so they do a scene where they have to wait for a character at a bar. Well, why not have them get drunk and like bond? And so they do almost a Jaws moment. Yeah, where it's like, oh yeah, that it's again not revolutionary. It's just a really simple, easy way to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, and it's like, not even... I would just... You could even revise, as you say, it's almost a Jaws movement. It's not... It is literally a Jaws...
It's literally the moment where they all get drunk.
Function of that scene, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to show that they are all finally getting along. They're all bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, and again, it's efficient because they're doing something at the time.
Yeah. They're waiting for Peter Capaldi to show up with a colander on his head.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other element of this I want to talk about, which is the weirdness.
Yeah, it's weird. I love how weird it is.
It feels like it takes a lot from comics. I think what James Gunn harnessed is that he didn't shy away from the weirder aspects of comics, right?
I think that
Same with Guardians.
I think that was probably his. I'm sure he's even said it. That seems like it was his specific goal, was to mine the weird stuff. That's why we have Polka Dot Man and the big bad is Starro.
Right, and like this stuff. Again, it's sort of realizing the simple truth of like it's all weird. Yeah. Why not do the weirdest stuff?
Yeah,
because the audience is we're gonna believe anything. It's a superhero movie. It's no different than Loki, the god of mischief. It's all the same.
Yeah, this same motherfucker is the guy that made us weep over a tree and a talking raccoon.
Right. But again, that's no different, I think, than a guy who dresses up like a clown.
No.
It's all ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why not go for the weirdest stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And they do a very good job at that. And it's not hard. I don't think it's hard what he's doing.
No,
it's just that studios don't trust it most of the time.
And you know, the box office receipts of this movie this weekend are going to be used to justify why you shouldn't do this. But then, I don't know.
No, I suspect that HBO Max, I suspect that they are able to keep track of streaming. And I suspect that their streaming numbers are very good. There's no way this film isn't doing really good. I can't believe, like, I think R-rated, so like teens aren't seeing it in theaters. You know where they're seeing it?
On
at home.
HBO, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just theaters aren't the future.
No. And certainly not right now when the movie's available to watch at home and there's been an explosion in the pandemic. But we've said it a lot, and it's not taking anything away from James Gunn, but what he's doing here is not revolutionary. It's just he's just doing the work. That's it.
He's just doing the work, and he's been trusted enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because Guardians was like Marvel's. They didn't care about that property. They gave it to him. I don't know how that deal was made, but like...
He said the only thing he was told he had to include was Thanos.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they, from what he said, he was pretty... I mean, especially if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2, you're like, wow, yeah, they really did just let you do whatever you wanted. Because it's a giant god planet father is the bad guy in that movie.
Right, and it's funny that they never talk about that in the other movies, because... That was a big thing that happened.
That's major. That's real major.
That's worse than Thanos.
You would think, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so
someone took a chance on him early on, and I know Marvel's good at that. They're good at getting directors who are unique. A lot of the time they sort of snuff out their style, which is why I think it's more about James Gunn as a writer, right? Like
yes.
His film, like the Marvel films, his films I think are more colorful. It's a prettier world, but like the CGI, the action, it's all still standard Marvel. It's how he writes the movies that stands out. I would say this movie is more uniquely his visually.
Yes, yeah.
And he has, I think what does make him stand out is it's that he takes the grotesque and then he also shows it as being beautiful. Because we haven't even talked about the ending of this movie, which is a horde of rats swarming on a giant starfish, digging into its eyeball after Harley Quinn dives in its eyeball, and she's swimming in its eyeball as the rats are burrowing into its fucking brain. And they shoot it as the most beautiful fucking thing ever.
And then the starfish has... just a heartbreakingly tragic final line before it dies, where it says it's an alien that was found just in space, just orbiting in space, by astronauts and then brought to Earth, and then it becomes this huge problem that has smaller parasites. It's basically Unity from Rick and Morty.
Right.
Or
it's actually, by the
Invasion
way,
of the Body Snatchers.
It's shockingly similar to a script I just wrote. Not enough to be a problem, but it was like it's shockingly similar.
Yeah. Yeah. The starfish has it's just as I was floating in the stars and I was happy once, and then it dies.
And then it dies.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And so like he takes this moment, this like rats feeding on a fucking starfish infesting a body, and it's a disgusting concept, and he shoots it in this beautiful way to kind of show its beauty. Because here's the thing, that's also not unmotivated. That's the point of the movie.
It's the point of the movie
is that they are the rats.
Yeah, they're the vermin, that the cast-offs, the discarded people.
Yeah, so
that's really within the Ratcatcher 2 character. That's like her whole thing.
Yeah, and she's great. We haven't talked about her. We haven't talked about John Cena. There's a few here, but like that is like, I love that that's a motivated choice. That it is, that's what the point of the Suicide Squad is. And I feel like the first David Ayer film touched on that, but he's such a stylized, like he did that grittiness. Mm-hmm. And so by giving this to James Gunn was actually a really good decision, because again, I think he has that ability to take the bizarre, the grotesque, and shoot it in this colorful, beautiful way, which is sort of the point.
And it's also, I think it serves the source material better when you present those kinds of ideas in a slightly more abstract way. Mm-hmm. Like David Ayer is well known for like gritty realism.
Right, and I don't think that, like his Joker, it was like, I don't think this works for this story.
But like with so James Gunn takes it and adds it's not like incredibly abstract. He just kind of uses the rats as a metaphor. Yeah. But I think it serves the source material a lot better, because we're dealing with such huge concepts. Yeah, it's like, well, let's get a little more colorful and thoughtful, and not that David Ayer's not thoughtful. It's just the more abstract I think is better.
Yeah, and here's what it is that going back to the Scorsese thing, because the argument is like, can superhero films be art, right?
Sure, anything is art that is created by a person.
But I guess when people say art, yeah, you're right. But like something that stands the test of time, something that I like a lot of the Marvel films. I do think though that a lot of them in 100 years they'll be kind of unwatchable.
Right. Most of them, because one movie I will immediately say is Tim Burton's Batman. But like not a lot of the Marvel movies, I might even say none of the Marvel movies are that. They don't have the quality that Tim Burton's Batman has, where you could just watch it as a piece of art, not connected to anything else.
Right. A lot of them look exactly the same because of how Marvel does things. A lot of them are continuations of
They're episodic
huge
by
story.
design.
Yes. By design. So it makes them kind of like they're not going to last, and it has nothing to do with their quality. I will say though that I think this could, because it is standalone. While being part of a series, it does exist on its own. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying that I think James Gunn has proven that it can be more. The problem is that also I think the system inherently just makes it hard. Yeah. Like it's that's what it is. It's not about the artist, and that's the problem. Like his Guardians of the Galaxies, great films. I'm not sure they'll stand the test of time.
No, in a just world, we'd watch those the same way you'd watch like some of those quirky, weird 80s science fiction movies like The Last Starfighter. Or, you know, like they would fall into those categories in a just world.
Right, and so I think the debate is skewed, because I think when Scorsese talks about superhero films, I don't think he's necessarily talking about the artists, unless he actually singled out artists. I don't think he did.
No, it seems like he's talking about the Walmart quality of them.
Yeah, and that's what it is that it's artists like James Gunn, He's absolutely an artist and a good one, and this movie shows that. He's making a blockbuster, which, again, not revolutionary because it's a blockbuster, but he's making artistic choices that are deliberate and really well thought out. But it's part of a bigger system, so it's hard to know, like, will people be able to go back and appreciate this? I think this has a good shot of it because I think he designed it as a closed circuit, too. I don't know if he did that on purpose, but I think he designed it well enough to be like, if you don't know anything about the DC universe, this might work. It's hard to tell because someone like Harley Quinn, it's like, well, do we need to know that she's, the Joker's ex? Does that matter?
It doesn't. You don't need to know it. It certainly, prior knowledge of who she is definitely helps, but you don't need, because it's her scene where she shoots the president. Right. She just talks about being in abusive relationships as non-specific. She's just like, I have a history of being in relationships like this. So you don't need to know that it's specifically the Joker. Right.
And I think, what she's talking about is a relatable enough thing. And so it's just like, all you need to know is, this is, okay, there are a bunch of superpowered villains. You just need to know the concept of superheroes and supervillains.
Yeah.
And then you're off to the races. You're like, okay, got it. They're like Batman villains.
Well, again, going back to Tim Burton's Batman, that movie starts right up because it assumes we all know the gist of who Batman is, and there is an origin that's told in flashback in that movie, but the movie starts with he's Batman already.
Yeah, it's fucking Batman. We got it.
You guys understand Batman, and there's a line in here used to introduce Idris's character where they say he's in prison because he shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet and put him in the ICU.
Oh yeah,
it just all that requires is that you know who Superman is, and everyone knows who Superman is.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't need to waste time explaining that,
Yeah. I love that what's the line they reuse? Is anything in his hands is a deadly weapon.
Right, she gives the same speech to introduce Cena.
Yeah.
Fucking Cena is so good
Cena,
at this.
Okay. I think we've talked about this before because it's similar of the Transformers movie. Cena really is a great villain.
He's a good bad guy, yeah.
He is such a he's not a heel, right? He was never a heel?
Mostly a face, yeah. They've tried a couple of heel turns of them because just because they always give that a shot, but he has had his biggest success as a good guy, as a babyface.
And I would say people enjoy this now because I also remember the Doom movie where I was like, man, The Rock, he's scary.
Well, he spent about half of his WWE. He was a bad guy pretty frequently.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is good as a bad guy. Yeah, he should play more of them.
He's good as a bad guy. He should play more of them. So should John Cena.
Yes.
They're both, John Cena is a terrifying presence, especially in this where he feels like a little unhinged.
In an alarming way, Harley's
in a
unhinged,
patriotic way.
Well, Harley's unhinged in a way where you're like, well, all right, I still, you would. Cena is unhinged in the sort of the in a more nationalistic just
he's
a more
lawful evil.
Yes.
Yeah. And here's why that works really well. Another really good writing choice is it's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
He's like a Team America fuck yeah type.
Yeah.
That's how they start it, where he's talking about he's the peacemaker and he kills people for peace.
Well,
and that's the joke is the irony
of it. He has a line, that's done for laughs initially, where he's like, I love peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to kill to maintain it.
Yeah.
And that's a joke when he says it, but as the movie progresses, it's like they really start to looks like, no, that is his character. That's who he is.
Well, they have this perfect moment where, they learn that the U.S. government also did all these experiments, is responsible for all the things they've uncovered.
Yeah.
And so there's this oh shit moment where you realize he's not going to stand for that. And then sure enough, he's like, I'm going to need those files. And he turns into a villain. Even though it's been there in front of our faces the whole time, we just haven't been presented with a situation where they would disagree.
it reminded me, this is going to sound weird, it reminded me of Gaston in Beauty and the Beast, because Gaston starts out as a buffoonish comic relief character, but they use those same traits as the movie goes on to turn him into a really scary bad guy.
And they show everybody loves him in the town, and then it's like, sure enough, he can get the whole town on his side.
He can.
Yeah, it's very similar, where it's these buffoonish qualities that are still like sinister, but the movie treats them as
funny
to get a load of this guy. And then the moment we're presented with a situation where like he can make that decision. He could either be like,
and they show some conflict, which is interesting.
He could say, "Oh, I'm a patriot, and this is not patriotic what they're doing." You know what I mean? They could have given him they didn't, like, they could have made him a good guy, but they didn't. And John Cena, with that attitude that he has, that like no nonsense voice, and then the fact that he's playing it like a dunce, it makes him really scary.
Well, yeah, and then in that sequence where they find Starro, they realize the U.S. is behind it. Flag wants to take the drives and give it to the media because he's a soldier. He's not a convict, and he's like, this is not what I'm fighting for. So Cena's like, you can't take that. So now they're in a fight. That fight. Because Cena's enormous, and he's like twice the size of Joel Kinnaman, even though Joel Kinnaman's like ripped in this movie. But it's like Flag never really has the upper hand in that fight, and it's like scary. It's hard to. It's basically like Cena is beating him so savagely that it's really like, it's like really driving home the point of how scary he is.
Right.
It's like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's man.
And then
it's
of course, Ratcatcher 2.
She's great.
Yeah, that's like her storyline with her dad and how she was raised in the streets, and her dad was this inventor who also had a terrible heroin addiction. It's a lot of that whole storyline.
It didn't affect me emotionally, because I think a lot of the reason a lot of this didn't affect me emotionally is they didn't get to spend enough time on the things. So like her backstory was good, but I also don't know if it's supposed to. Like I don't need to. The movie doesn't need to make me sad to be successful.
No,
I understand where she's coming from, and I understand the character. That's all I need.
Well, it was. I thought it was a nice through line to have, where she's the one who kind of wants to be part of this group, or at least wants to be part of a group. And she's like the one who's trying. It's almost like she's the one trying to keep the family together. And she has that adorable rat Sebastian that keeps trying to make friends with Idris. Who's just not having it.
When someone's like, "Is that rat waving at me?" Yeah, the rat kind of steals the show a lot of the time.
And King
giving
Shark,
Idris Elba, King Shark, giving Idris Elba a fear of rats. Was fun. It was a fun idea, because of course it ends with rats swarming everybody, and he has to deal with that.
And he takes, again, this is not revolutionary, it's just real efficient and doing the work, but he takes the idea that Idris has a phobia of rats, which is introduced, as a gag, and it's still played as a gag, but he gets to explain briefly why he has that phobia, and it's because his dad locked him in a box with rats when he was bad.
Idris Elba, basically his whole through line is daddy issues. Yeah. He's a father. He sees himself as a father figure to the rat catcher.
Yes.
She has father issues. Her dad was loving, but basically, had an addiction that killed him. And so she was abandoned by that. And so like they do, that's the through line, is all the fucking dad issues.
And then he has to be the dad of the team. He has to lead in the final season. See,
he has to be the leader.
It's all there.
Viola
baby.
Davis says, "I'm going to make a leader out of you," and at the end, he fucks her over, and she's like, "I told you I'd make a leader out of you," which was great.
Yeah,
it's all the pieces are there.
Not revolutionary. He just did the work.
Indiana Jones also didn't like small animals. It's not. Yeah, they're not. All the pieces are things that have been done in the past. He did the fucking work.
Yeah,
it's exactly that. James Gunn, like, it's just he nails blockbuster writing. I think he nails indie writing too, but he's been doing blockbusters lately. And like, yeah, I don't know. Part of me is like, I really, all I need now is for James Gunn to make another like original film, something that he has total control over.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess that's the only thing missing from this for me, is that there's still a studio saying, you have to do this, you got to do that, you got to put this in. But for the limitations he has, he crafted a hell of a film here.
Yeah, it's a delight. It is a perfect summer movie.
Yeah, this is what blockbusters should be like more. And I'm not talking about necessarily the weirdness, the gore. No, it's the structure. It's the fact that the person writing it was probably given an amount of freedom to actually tell a story and tell it properly.
Yeah.
Instead of like, that's what it feels like. It feels like a lack of overwhelming pummeling of notes where it's like,
well, it's
like he was told you got to do a couple things, sure. Mm-hmm. But like the story still feels like his story, and it feels like he had the room to tell it the way he needed to.
Oh, it feels cohesive. Like the movie has a personality. It has a soul, if you want to go that far. Like you can feel that there was intent, and I don't know. It's just it. If
DC wants to look at, I think. Well, all right. I don't think DC needs to learn this lesson, to be honest. Because here's the thing. I think DC knows the best way to make a movie is to give it to a person, or a couple people, and say, do what you want. Like, here are parameters, but tell your story. I think the problem with DC is that person was very often Zack Snyder. And people, you can't deny that the Snyder films aren't Zack Snyder films, right?
I suppose.
Like, they're very much, they look like Zack Snyder films.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean, is DC isn't Marvel in that regard, where they're like, make your movie. The David Ayer thing, I think, was a fluke. When you look at most of the DC movies, they are from, like, they do feel like they were made by that director, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all this is they went to James Gunn and they were like, so like DC just needs to pick the right people, is I guess my point.
Yeah, that's just in general. Hollywood in general needs to be a little more.
Yeah, because James Gunn can't do, like, I wouldn't give James Gunn, like, a Star Wars, unless, well, no, I would. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't give him like, a trilogy film or something.
Just more people. Let's let more people in to do their version of a story.
Let them do their thing is the point, is that what we're seeing is the product of a single, or I shouldn't say single, because a director gets help from all sorts of people.
A lot of people.
But the product of a single, like, node, like this central point making these decisions.
It's a single vision that everyone is agreeing on.
Yeah. It's like we keep saying, it's not revolutionary.
No, it's just it's very basic, but it's like basics that are sort of getting forgotten a lot in modern blockbusters, where it's so much so many movies by committee.
Yeah.
And it's really, that is the worst way to tell a story.
It really is. And it's nice. It's nice to see that. I like I said at the top of this, I do wish this movie came out like 5 years ago, because I'm just tired. I'm just tired of, like, especially after watching The Green Knight, where I'm like, fuck yeah, movies, you know, like,
yeah, we're back, baby.
Yeah. This is a good film. This is a great film. It just, the superhero fatigue kind of,
sure, I get that.
Yeah, made it a little, I don't know, less oomph.
Sure.
But yeah, this was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Any other thoughts?
No, watch it.
Yeah, watch this. It also, okay, I don't know if this is controversial. A lot of people are saying, like, you got to see it in theaters. I don't actually think you have to see this in theaters. This isn't fucking Dune. You know what I mean? That said, if you can support it in theaters, it's probably better. But also, don't get the fucking coronavirus. So, like, you know, see it safely, is my point. I don't think you're missing out. I don't think you're hugely missing out if you're like, I'm scared. I don't want to get, you know.
No.
A virus.
By all means, watch it at home. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I just don't think this is the movie that, like, this doesn't need to be seen in theaters. I don't think.
No, it was fun. It was fun seeing it in the theater, but you know,
it was
whatever.
definitely fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that because I think most movies should be seen in theaters because it's a big fucking screen. That's cool. Just, right now, just don't die.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it sucks right now.
Yeah.
That's it. We can be done.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Listen, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there, there's exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman and Fox Mulder is a Maniac and Star Trek The Next Futurama. That's all for $5 a month. You get like 8 podcasts. It's wild what you get.
It's so much value, so much bang for that buck. We also have a store that has a complicated URL. So for now, just go to gamefullyunemployed.com and you'll get the link there. We have t-shirts, masks, mugs, posters, all kinds of things. So check that out.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Also, if there's like something specific that you want on that store, Teespring has like 20 options for shirts, and it's overwhelming. So just like make a request because I bet we could make it happen.
But we could make that happen, yeah. Just tweet at one of us. Something's bound to happen.
And review us on Apple Podcasts
leave us
or
a
wherever.
review, wherever you're doing this thing.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget to vote.
Sure. Are we voting? Is that happening?
Vote. Get it. Rock the vote. Get
Rock
out
the
there.
vote. Vote or die.
Yeah. All right.